is Komaru Naegi. I'm a completely normal high school girl who lives an abnormal daily life.
I have made this video because of something extremely important. There is an injustice in the Danganronpa community, and that injustice is Ultra Despair Girls. For convenience, I will be calling Ultra Despair Girls as UDG in this video, and Trigger Happy Havoc as TH. As well, a warning that there will be major spoilers for the game in this video. However, I will tell you when I start to discuss these. UDG is the third iteration in the Danganronpa series. It was released after Trigger Happy Havoc and Goodbye Despair. However, it takes place between the two aforementioned, almost as a in-between. The main character is Komaru Naegi, who is the sister of Makoto Naegi, the protagonist of THH. Her acting companion is Toko Fukawa / Genocide Jack, who also appears in THH. The one large difference between UDG and other Danganronpa games is the fact it's a third-person shooter, while the other iterations of the series have been visual novels. I truly believe this is one of the main reasons why so many people seem to skip over this game in its entirety. I'm not exaggerating either. Let me show you just how few people have played UDG in comparison to other Danganronpa games on Steam. Let's take a look at THH. So THH has 3374 all-time peak. That's not too bad. That's pretty good actually. So let's look at Goodbye Despair now. Goodbye Despair had a much smaller all-time peak, 1848. And that was actually very recently, but it also had a very good start in March 2016. So now we have the most recent release, V3, 4667 all-time peak, which is absolutely nuts. As you can see though, that was mostly all at the beginning. And now, UDG, 462. Absolutely insane. That is absolutely fucking ridiculous. Rarely anybody has played this game. So few of my friends have played this game too, who are Danganronpa fans. People completely ignore this game and they completely skip over it, and the stats are evident here. This is absolutely insane proportionally. Now, maybe it's too expensive a game, you might ask.
Spare change. Spare change, man.
Well, as of September 6, it is priced at $30, while THH and Goodbye Despair are priced at $20. V3 is $40. It is understandable that may dissuade some, considering it's a much shorter game than the other three titles. You know, I sort of understand it. However, UDG is canon. It's not a spin-off. I feel that many Danganronpa fans believe that UDG isn't important to the overall universe, and they couldn't be more wrong. So let's talk about the game now. The game takes place in the setting known as Toa City. It's located in East Asia near Japan. Some of the main casts that Danganronpa fans will recognize include Toko Fukawa, Byakuya Togami, Makoto Naegi, Nagito Komeda, Monokuma. Others I'll be discussing in a later video to avoid spoilers, of course, because there are some very good characters in this game, I will tell you. The cast in this game, I think, is insanely good. As mentioned, the game is a third-person shooter where you either control Komaru or Toko by player choice. I won't go into strict details about the combat, but know that Komaru shoots a megaphone with different bullet types, while Toko uses her Genocide Jack form to slice up Monokumas. The gameplay isn't anything revolutionary by any means, and can be quite buggy with hitboxes. If you've played the game, you know what I'm talking about. However, there's still some variation to the combat and enemies that you will encounter. I should mention there are also puzzles in the game, known as Monokuman. These can be quite annoying and very challenging later on in the game. In addition, there are a number of collectibles which let the player learn more about the backstory of characters and the setting of Toa City. These can be nice, especially if you like collecting collectibles, which I do. It's a good way to learn about the backstory. As expected with any Danganronpa title, the soundtrack is absolutely banging, with some tracks from THH remixed into new ones. There are also some original tracks composed by the talented Masafumi Takada, very good artist. The game was also accompanied by an extensive manga collection, which I've read cover to cover, including the non-translated ones, which was a struggle to say the very least. However, the story and setting is what truly matters in UDG. The telling of said story is executed extremely well, with the plentiful anime cinematics within the game. These anime cinematics, by the way, they look extremely good. They are extremely good looking. It looks professional, because it is, and I'm very upset that they never actually made it into its own anime. In addition to that, the excellent voice acting by Shirami Lei, I'm definitely pronouncing that wrong, as Komaru. I know Shirami, she's done so many things. She's done Makoto Nijima, she's done Suna, she's done a ton of stuff. And Amanda Celine Miller as Toko. She's done a good amount of stuff too, both very talented and extremely evident if you do play the game. The amount of character development within UDG for Komaru and Toko is extremely good, by the way. I know I keep talking very well about this game. We will talk about the negatives, I promise. However, the character development is exemplary and should not be ignored. We'll go into more detail when we do a thorough story synopsis. Speaking of story synopsis, it is time we begun, because that is the major talking point, and that is where we will discuss the bad, the good, the great, and we're going to do that right now. So if you do plan on playing UDG, close this video because there will be major spoilers for the cast, the story, the game as a whole, and it's best that you play the game. If you do intend on playing this game and you don't just want to watch a synopsis and me talk about it, then close the video, go buy the game, wait for it on sale, and enjoy it because this game really is good.
Danganronpa.
The game itself begins with a cutscene telling us that Komaru has been held hostage in an apartment for 18 months in Toa City.
This is my world. This two-bedroom apartment that I live in is my world.
She has had absolutely no interaction with the outside world except for food that gets given to her through a door slot throughout the day. I will say that the food she is given is quite yummy looking, so it's not all so bad. That is until she receives an unwelcome guest in the form of a Monokuma. Who would have guessed? Komaru flees and is greeted by Byakuya Togami. I always pronounce that wrong and I will continue to. And other members of the Future Foundation sent to save her.
Future Foundation 14th Division, Byakuya Togami.
Togami holds the line as Komaru flees to a nearby diner, where she learns that life is normal for many at Toa City, only for a short time, however. Now, I will say, there is a sense of disturbance in this game where you see the Monokumas in the anime cutscene specifically, and you see them commit this genocide, and it's really disturbing because in Trigger Happy Havoc and Goodbye Despair, you never saw Monokuma ever kill anybody. However, in this game, you see them commit these acts, and you get taken back because you think, oh, Monokuma, he's a terrible little bear, but he's not going to do anything. But no, in this game, he goes all out, and it's great. So Monokumas begin their genocide and Komaru must fight back with her new megaphone weapon which Togami gave to her. This is the first time you see the combat in this game, And as I've said earlier, the combat is really not that great. The hitboxes can be buggy and there isn't a gigantic amount of variety. However, I don't believe that Danganronpa fans really play these games for a solid combat system, rather an excellent story and characters, which is evident in this game. As Komalu escapes a diner, she is introduced to the main antagonists of the game, who are known as the Warriors of Hope. Oh, the Warriors of Hope. I feel like most fans of the series don't think the Warriors of Hope are great villains, and I would agree and disagree. While I wouldn't dare compare them to Junko in any way, shape, or form,
Me! Junko fucking Enoshima!
there is something disturbing about children committing brutal acts of violence and torture. I struggle to think of any other games, and I mean this quite seriously, that put children in such a heinous light, and I commend Spike for not being scared to embrace this genre. The game gives us some backstory of Hope's Peak Academy and how Komalu was kidnapped. I like this a lot because it establishes a connection between a specific chapter in THH where Makoto sees the video from home of the ripped up sofa, thus telling us when exactly Komalu was kidnapped.
Makoto Naegi accepted into Hope's Peak Academy, and his family who supported such a lucky boy. But it seems like something's happened to this family's well-being.
Komalu proceeds to a helicopter where she meets up with some more future Foundation members, where she learns about the reasoning of her imprisonment and major events that have occurred, including the rise of Toa Group, which is a major conglomerate that does play a significant role in the game. She also learns about, the worst tragedy. I never remember how to say that event. The worst event in human history. As well, a specific red silhouette appears, and that's all I'll say about that. The pacing at the beginning of the game may seem like a plot dump, however, one must remember that our knowledge comes from Komalu herself, which is heavily limited due to her imprisonment. Obviously, she doesn't know anything. Komalu's rescue fails and is captured by Monokuma's, unsurprisingly, thus being sent to another cell where she is met by the servant.
You look completely exhausted.
Who are you?
Me? Oh, my name's not really important.
At first I didn't know if the servant was actually Nagito because of my pessimistic nature of the series, but nonetheless it's true that Nagito Komeda is the servant. The servant shows that his personality is very demeaning and rude when talking with Komalu, knowing that she's nothing special. This personality was exhibited in the late game of Goodbye Despair.
You still don't realize it? Jeez, get it together. You're supposed to be the symbols of hope, aren't you? Ah, I forgot. Except for Hajime, of course.
Even so, the servant lets Komalu out of her cell to her surprise. She fights her way in hopes of escape, but is formally introduced to the Warriors of Hope. We learn that the Warriors of Hope are actually Lil Ultimates. It's sort of a cute way to establish their uniqueness. This includes Masaru Daimon as the Lil Ultimate PE, Nagisa Shingetsu as the Lil Ultimate Social Studies, Jataro Kemuri as the Lil Ultimate Art, Kotoko Utsugi as the Lil Ultimate Drama, and Monica, known as the Lil Ultimate Homeroom. Monica has no last name that we know of at this point at least. Kotoko is my personal favorite due to the great voice acting from Erika Lindbeck. Erika Lindbeck does voices like Futaba, Jessie, and FF7 Remake. She's done a lot of good stuff, and she's just as good in this game as well. The children start to show their devious nature by branding Komalu with a wristband that prevents her from leaving Toa City due to it being triggered by an explosive.
What is this?
This wristband is a custom-made device given to the targets of the game. It would be best if you didn't try to remove it. Any tampering with it, and you'll go boom.
Komalu is released back into Toa City as she is viewed as a demon, along with all other adults. I'm not sure what the age minimum is to be considered a demon, however it must be quite young, as Komalu is only 14 or 15 at this time, most likely. Komalu parachutes onto a rooftop where she is met by Monokumas, of course, until saved by the one and only Genocide Jack.
Oh, killing these things just doesn't light my fire!
They have their introductions where Komalu is understandably terrified until Jack sneezes back into Toko. Upon discussion, we can see one of many lewd manga scenes involving Toko's fantasies, which are honestly hilarious. I love that this is an addition to the game. It's very funny. The game lets us use Genocide Jack for the first time in combat, where she is invincible, and does massive damage to Monokumas, however using a limited battery system. I rarely use Jack my first playthrough, except for a few annoying sections, but it's a cool mechanic nonetheless. Toko and Komalu form an uneasy alliance to where they both want to look for Byakuya, each for different reasons. Komaru wants to, get the hell out of Towa City in some way by Future Foundation. Toko wants to see Byakuya for her own personal reasons. I want to point out that the interactions between Toko and Komaru are perfect and really add character to the game.
What is this? Training potty?
Well, if it isn't your little buddy, maybe you should try riding on it.
Hey, who are you calling a baby?
You're offended, but you're still gonna ride it?
This is surprisingly relaxing.
Seriously?
It helps that the sprites done by the artist are some of the best in the series to really convey the emotions. I would especially say this for Komaru. I know, I like Komaru a lot, but I really do think she has some of the best sprites. Some of the collectibles in the game trigger cutscenes which are fully voiced. Most games would not do this, and I love that UDG is no different from its predecessors when it comes to fully fleshing out their voice acting. I mentioned earlier about these arcade machine puzzles. The first one is very easy, but they will get much more difficult later on to the point of annoyance, if I'm being honest with you. To be fair, I have a peanut brain, so I am a little biased on my dislike for these. We find a collectible known as a hit list, which shows characters that are usually related to ones we already know of. In this case, this is Taka's father, I believe. Taka, who is from THH. I don't remember what he was the ultimate of, but I remember finding him quite annoying. Eventually, we find a child who has given us a challenge. I like these challenges a lot more than the arcade machines, even though there aren't too many of them. They're more inconspicuous and clever. Upon completion, we get to see a side of Komaru where she has a strangely large sense of pride in beating a literal child at their own game to Toko's embarrassment. I enjoy scenes like these because it gives the character some depth.
Aw yeah, that's right. Who's the boss now?
Don't be gloating about beating a little kid.
Something I find interesting is that all the bodies of the adults in this game are silhouetted to where they're not very identifiable. I'm not sure if this was a design choice or a way to prevent the game from receiving an 18+ rating, even though it still became an 18+ game in the end. Komaru and Toko reach the bridge leading out of town where they meet an energetic boy related to the ultimate swimmer from THH. I really do love seeing so many connections to THH in this game as it fleshes out the backstory that much more. We learn the bridge is destroyed, but Yuta is determined to swim across. Unaware of his wristbands, he explodes. Toko gives Komaru some tough love, and this really begins to say the character development among both main characters. I truly do mean that the character development in this game is some of the best I've experienced, and I mean that truthfully too. Later we find a kid vendor who sells us upgrades in exchange for our Monokuma coins. Cool little customization feature which lets you give certain attributes to Komaru's megaphone and Jack's scissors. I never got too into these personally, but I imagine you can outfit them in crazy combinations. Komaru and Toko continue their search of Byakuya, while running into new Monokuma variants such as the Bomber Siren and the extremely dreaded Junk Monokuma.
This room's creepy. Like something might pop out any second.
What do you mean, pop out? Don't say something creepy like...
Ugh. I absolutely hate this Monokuma type. I think it's disgusting looking, and it's actually quite creepy too in my opinion. At this point in the game, I started to ask myself how there were so many Monokumas and where they were coming from, considering the fact that in Trigger Happy Havoc and Goodbye Despair, there was like maybe what, 10 Monokumas? I mean, I guess in Goodbye Despair there was many more, but still. A gameplay mechanic of this is finding certain upgrades, which allows the player to upgrade Komaru and Toko with new skills, which is pretty neat. Some of these helped out a lot, while others were extremely useless, which is pretty normal, I'd say, for an upgrade system. Another interesting mechanic in this game is that there's no sensitivity slider in the options. If you wanted to change the aiming speed, then you would have to find aforementioned upgrades. During our search, we encounter an arena with Masaru Daimon. The backstory of Masaru is explained in an indirect and disturbing way to showcase how mentally and physically scarred he is. I remember experiencing this for the first time really caught me off guard because it actually is disturbing. This arena would act as a boss fight against Masaru in a mech form. The boss fight is nothing special, just shoot Masaru's mech and dodge a few attacks in essence, nothing special. Upon defeat, the children swarm Masaru and tell us that failure leads to death for even the Warriors of Hope. It really shows that the Monokuma don't have any loyalty, or not to these Warriors of Hope anyway. This would signify the end of chapter 1, where we are greeted with a cutscene of Byakuya being strung up like an old Billy Harrington video. What he says is determined on your rank, ranging from plain insults with C and D to heavy praise with A. I struggled to get an A for the longest time until chapter 4, so I heard every variant of insult he had to say.
But you killed yourself yet, pig? Don't you want to just die from embarrassment?
Komalu and Toko find refuge in a subway system until needing Jack to escape an onslaught of Monokumas. Upon escape, we're greeted by Jotaro, the little ultimate art. Jotaro is, how do I say this? Jotaro is absolutely disgusting. Let's just leave it at that. He provides us with a menacing scene of adults strung up like puppets, then proceeds to go into detail about how he hunted them down and murdered them. I mean, I've played a lot of strange games, but there's something grotesque about a child talking so gleefully about such topics. Toko has to give some more tough love to Komalu, and they continue through the tunnels until reaching a white-looking Monokuma. This Monokuma will call itself Shirokuma. Shirokuma has one of his eyes covered with a bandage, an exceedingly innocent personality. I think Shirokuma and his undiscovered counterpart are cute little additions to the game, and extremely interesting additions to the story.
I'm a nice bear. The kind of bear who would give my opponent the corner in Othello.
Shirokuma speaks of an adult refuge in the sewers where we end up escorting him. There are many escort sections which can be a little annoying, but to be fair, when are escort sections ever fun? I have no idea. We reach the base where hundreds of adults lie in hiding, including a special individual known as Hiroko Hagakure. This is indeed the mother of Yasuhiro from THH. I thought she was his sister for the longest time, but I guess she's simply aged well. You can give any hit list collectibles to Hiroko and she'll provide some interesting backstory on the characters. Talking with Shirokuma, he explains that the Warriors of Hope were part of the elementary school detachment related to Hope's Peak. This makes sense, hence the Lil Ultimate titles they brand. We meet the leader of the resistance, Haiji Toa, the same Toa that the city is named after. Due to heavy losses, however, he's deemed a defeated outlook on the situation and butts heads with Toko. Haiji is disliked by many who have played this game, including myself by the way. He's just not a likable character in the slightest, and that becomes even more evident later on in the story. Toko and Komaru end up staying overnight anyway thanks to Shirokuma, who gives them a wireless transmitting device to get in contact with Byakuya. He says the highest tower in the area is the Toa Tower, of course, and that would be their next destination. Another funny animated still appears where Komaru is hogging all the covers. I have to say that Komaru is 100% the type of person to do that.
It's morning.
Yeah, sure is.
Of course, there's no real way to tell underground.
But still, I feel refreshed. I was able to get a really good night's sleep.
You're the only one who slept well. How can you just fall asleep so fast like that?
If you've been finding collectibles consistently, then you experience the discord between Komaru and Toko involving manga and light novels. It's a great show of banter between these two. I like it a lot. Along the way, Toko starts to show signs of hesitation and apprehensiveness when discussing Toa Tower and the future foundation. Within the tower, we meet Taichi Fujisaki, who is, yes, the father of Chihiro Fujisaki. He expresses strong love for Chihiro and his wish of seeing him. This made Taichi's death by Monokuma really bad for me, and was the first to upset me in this game for sure.
He was probably worried about his family. Worried until the very end. I hope his child is doing well at least.
I guess it's better than knowing his son died during the killing game though. Taking the elevator to the top floor somehow led us to an arena with Jotaro, where we learn his love of filth and hateful self-image was taught by his mother. Komaru and Toko fight Jotaro until his defeat. The last moments of his cutscene, however, show Jotaro to be a handsome boy, which indicate that his mother may have been jealous of her son's beauty. With Jotaro gone, Komaru and Toko get in contact with the future foundation as Makoto comes onto the screen to Komaru's surprise. This signals the end of chapter 2 and the story for the game starts to ramp up quite nicely. Makoto and Komaru get caught up in Toko's secret of knowing about Makoto being a part of the future foundation. Makoto explains the events of what occurred during Komaru's imprisonment. An extremely important plot point is that Makoto says the future foundation received an anonymous tip of where the captives including Komaru were being held in Toa City. It's very easy to not pay attention to every single line. However, the writers at Spike are clever with dropping hints and foreshadows on what's happening in the story, so it's very important to pay attention to every single plot point. We learn that Byakuya is being used as a hostage to deter Future Foundation from coming to save the captives. This provides a dilemma as Toko refuses to have any harm coming to Byakuya, thus threatening Makoto that she will kill Komaru if that were to happen. The relationship between Toko and Komaru starts to severely degrade from this moment, yet they still work together. It's rare to see protagonists be faced with a realistic scenario such as this that isn't rainbows and flowers, which I can always appreciate in the Danganronpa games. The change of pace shows Kotoko and Monika mourning Jotaro, yet this escalates into Kotoko experiencing PTSD from a trigger word Monika used on her. Scenes of Kotoko suffering from sexual abuse as a child occur as we continue to learn about the terrible things done to these children in their lives. Monika acknowledges her mistake in using the trigger word and physically abuses Kotoko until she is certain that Kotoko has reinforced her hate for adults. This is one of the first strong signs that Monika is conditioning the other warriors of hope into hating adults. We are then introduced to Kurokuma, who could be seen as Shirokuma's other half. I don't care for Kurokuma as much as Shirokuma, but it would be a lie to say he didn't have an expressive personality.
So anyway, the hell are we talking about? You saying something about making adults into sausages? Gonna pull out the organs, grind them up, make them into yummy, cruelty-free cuisine?
At this point in the story, we have a well-painted picture of where everyone stands. However, I can assure you that there are some twists and turns on the way that you won't expect. I didn't expect them the first time I played this game, especially near the end, toward the final chapters, and I feel you will think the same. We learn that Kurokuma acts as an advisor, however his origin still remains unknown. It's clear by now that Kurokuma acts as an evil twin, I suppose you could say, of Shirokuma. Komaru and Toko return to the underground refuge, where we learn something very interesting. None of the adults within the refuge have had any other children, which indicates that the Warriors of Hope are targeting parents, most likely based on the fact of their abuse. While debating with Haiji, Monokumas have found the refuge, and the adults sustain extreme losses. Haiji shows his strong, quote, strong intellect by blaming Komaru and Toko as being followed, and they've been taken prisoner. If you recall, I said earlier how Haiji is universally disliked, I'd say, and I'm sure you can understand why at this point. In the middle of the night, Komaru is confronted by Kotoko, the little ultimate drama, who takes her prisoner instead of killing her due to Komaru's, quote, insane cuteness. Toko involuntarily summons Jack and chases after Komaru in an act of rescue. Now, this next part of the game has taken a lot of criticism from a few communities for being too disturbing. I'm not trying to start a fight in the comment section, but up to this point we've experienced torture, abuse, and murder, so I don't quite understand this picking and choosing when it comes to what's disturbing. Anyway, the minigame in question is the obedience minigame, where you must keep the lewd-ass Mickey Mouse arms, as I called them, away from Komaru before she gives in to pleasure and becomes motivated, as Kotoko says. I see this as innuendo that Kotoko's mind has turned her own sexual abuse into a positive, which happens more often than one would think. This is rather grotesque, but still accurate writing from Spike on this matter. Toko fights her way through Monokuma and rescues Komaru, who then proceeds to fight Kotoko in her own arena. Instead of Kotoko falling to the children, Jack saves her in hopes of Kotoko's help to escape Towa City. Nagisa, the little ultimate social studies, appears and wants to help escort both Komaru and Toko to Towa City because of their constant hampering of creating paradise. This to me was the first chink in the armor of the Warriors of Hope, that Nagisa would rather let us leave instead of killing us, something that conflicts with Monika's point of view. The escort doesn't go smoothly as the Monokumas decide to fight Nagisa and the duo, much to their surprise. Nagisa decides to open up after this telling of his overworked circumstances. We learn about Nagisa's childhood, and we now know about the childhood of each ultimate except for Monika. At this point, you'd have to be a sociopath not to feel sympathy for the terrible lives these children have experienced. They were so far gone, actually, that they all contemplated mass suicide on the school rooftop. However, the ultimate despair made her appearance and saved them. Big sis Junko.
If you don't want it, give it to me.
With the influence of Junko, the little ultimates leveled up by killing each of their parents one by one. This will probably get the video flagged, but I can't even blame them for what they did. Parents fucking deserved it, man. Nagisa leads them to a secret exit. However, a surprise appearance by the servant convinces Komaru not to leave. Nagito reveals his cunning by spilling Toko's secret that Komaru was meant to act as a trade for Byakuya from the beginning. This fallout between the duo leads to a fight of Komaru versus Jack. Something lewd about this fight is, as you take damage, Komaru loses her clothes due to Jack's scissors. Nice fan service there, Spike. Komaru emerges victorious, and the two decide it's best for them to make up and work together for the future. Nagito informs them of the children's headquarters in the area called Towa Hills. The duo make their way back to the refuge in preparation for the assault on Towa Hills.
Well, how about this? Can I call you Toki?
Toki?
Who the hell is that?
It'll be your nickname.
Toki Doki?
Oh, I've never been called by a nickname before. Well, other than insults.
Never? Not even as a kid? Well, I hope we get along together, Toki.
That will always be one of my favorite interactions between the two. It's a great example of how their relationship is deepening, considering we know how antisocial Toko has been. Nagisa starts to see Monika for what she really is, and how her loyalty isn't to the creation of paradise, but Big Sis Junko instead.
Sorry, Monika doesn't care about paradise or anything like that.
What?
Komalu and Toko reach the refuge and find it under attack from Monokumas. The duo fend off the assault, however, a breach in the wall has left Komalu no choice but to sacrifice Shirokuma to seal it. This scene was absolutely awful, and I hated it in all its entirety. Don't ever make me do that shit again, Spike. That was so bad. Komalu finds newfound hope in her recent despair and acts as an inspiration for the adults still alive, filling them with hope. The duo and Haiji decide to go to a Toa factory where an apparent trump card lies in wait. One of the literally weirdest scenes of the game that I still don't have an answer to, involving Haiji, take it as you will.
I won't resist.
No, that's not what I was thinking at all. Especially not with you. I like him younger. As young as possible.
What the fuck? This factory section of UDG is really not great. I don't care for it one bit, and find it to be one of the weakest sections in the game. The lasers are buggy, the environment is a maze, and of course you have to listen to Haiji yell at you after confessing to be an actual pedophile. Continuing through the factory, we realize that the Toa family is responsible for the mass manufacture of Monokumas. It didn't really hit me at the time, but this scene elaborates on the origin of Monokuma itself. People who say this game doesn't matter to the story of Danganronpa after this are fucking stupid. Haiji's trump card is known as a Big Bang Monokuma. Persona 5 anyone? This gargantuan-sized Monokuma will apparently be used to fight the children in Toa Hills. Nagisa appears in a frantic state, and we take him down somewhat easily. That boss fight can be sort of annoying due to the shitty hitboxes, which is, as you have noticed, a common trend within this game. Nagisa perishes, and a scene with Monika hints a little parricide, also known as killing your parents. A nice change of pace though shows that Shirokuma is still alive, even if decapitated, and is there to warn both Komalu and Toko that Haiji has completely lost it. No shit, Shirokuma. This is where the story really begins to escalate, as Haiji and the adults have become so broken that they're intent on killing all the children in Toa City. Komalu and Toko fight their way to Toa Hills and navigate through some rather obnoxious puzzles involving the little ultimates. We get to learn about their backstory, even though most of the information was already known, except for Monika. The elevator to the top floor is secured by a retinal scanner from Haiji's father, who is apparently dead. The body is still available in the next room, thus Komalu has the pleasure of decapitating his head to bring back to the elevator. Now, this is a negative for me. What happens next, one of my main gripes with the game's story. This is called being backed into a corner and needing to do a plot dump on a short notice through a stupid outlet. In essence, the ghost of Haiji's father communicates with Komalu that Monika is Haiji's sister. Monika was responsible for killing her biological father, and the ghost speaks of a woman who influenced her to become what she is. Wow, I wonder who this woman could be. Komalu and Toko make their way up to the top where they help Kotoko from some rabid Monokumas. The three put their differences aside in hopes of defeating Monika while finding Monika's torture room. I'm actually glad that Kotoko survived because from the beginning I always liked her. Haiji once again shows his moral degradation in the face of adversity. Maybe a few too many minutes in that underground lair, huh?
And that's why we can't show any mercy. Not anymore. I'll never forgive those bastards. Never!
Monika's room is eventually found, and who do we see plastered on the walls? Of course, Junko Enoshima. The room itself is a literal shrine to the ultimate despair. The journey to the airship continues, where Kurokuma is found with the offer of a riddle. 3 doors and only 1 Monika. Now, if you've been paying attention, then you'll know which one it is immediately, based on a certain room earlier in the chapter. The correct door, of course, would be the one with the ladder. The same ladder that is used to enter Monika's room. Now, I'm not gonna say I'm a genius or anything, but I actually figured this out on my first try.
Yay! There's no riddle I can't solve.
Yeah, calm down, lady. You only solved a child's riddle.
So Monika ended up not being disabled, and that was all a ploy to gain sympathy. Classic. It's hard to blame her though, as we learned that Haiji and his dad treated Monika horribly for her brilliance. Another reason to hate Haiji.
How many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man? I love the young people.
Monica reveals that she was the one responsible for the creation of the Monokuma and released them to the world. It's pretty neat that we now know the definitive origin of Monokuma himself, given that he's the mascot of the entire series. Kurokuma assumes a mech form, and the duo must defeat him, as expected. The boss fight isn't too hard, so once defeated, Monica gives us a controller, which would end the Monokumas and the brainwashing of the children. But that seems a little too easy, right? Because you would be correct. Kotoko and Haiji both appear to give their contrasting views on destroying the controller. The game makes you choose about 15 times if I remember correctly. This bugged me a tad because you have to choose one option every single time, which doesn't give you a sense of freedom. Monica and Haiji provide their own plot dump on how Toa Group was playing both sides for the forces of despair and hope. Typical shady arms dealing corporation shit. Monica's obsession with Junko led to the successor concept, where she wanted to preserve Junko's legacy for eternity.
Sis used to say all the time that she wanted to paint the world with despair. If someone could do that, don't you think they would make the best successor ever?
What do you mean?
War.
Huh?
Causing war. If a war breaks out, the world topples back into despair, right?
But an even better way of spreading despair, provide someone with a lose-lose scenario. That lose-lose scenario in this case involves the controller. Monica and her genius rigged the children's helmets to explode upon the destruction of said controller. Yes, the Monokumas would be destroyed, but at what cost?
If you destroy the controller, the Monokumas stop, but all the Monokuma heads will blow up! And then, headless children everywhere!
The children are killed. What would Future Foundation do when they found out? They'd think the adults who survived were behind it. And then they'd find out Toa Group was involved with manufacturing the Monokumas. From that evidence, I'm guessing Future Foundation would think the adults were remnants of despair. And if that happens, Future Foundation would crush this town immediately.
Future Foundation wouldn't take very kindly the seeing Toa Group being affiliated with the remnants of despair. The world would plunge back into chaos, and war would fester like a plague. I love these types of lose-lose scenarios because it feels like there's no hope, only despair.
Shut up! Leave me alone! This is just too much. Why do I have to be a part of this?
Which is, of course, a proper tenet of the Danganronpa series. I think it's time we took a step back and summed up what's happened in this chapter so far, because it is a tiny bit confusing. We learned that Monica made the Monokumas. Toa Group sold weapons to both sides of the war, including the creation of the brainwashing helmets. The destruction of the controller would kill all the children in addition to the Monokumas. This was all part of Monica's plan to name a successor to Junko Enoshima. But who would that be, you might ask?
There's no way you can be a vessel of Big Sis Junko! Kotoko, when did I ever say that Monica wanted to be the successor? Huh? Monica's not the one who's going to be the successor.
Komaru is.
It's gonna be Miss Komaru Naegi.
Komaru, of course. Duh. Monica took a page out of Nagito's playbook, but in an opposite fashion. Have Komaru fill herself with so much hope that once faced with such a situation, only a very strong level of despair would overcome her. Komaru isn't an ultimate, she's just a
Completely normal high school girl.
Thus, we can't blame her when faced with this new realization. The game only gives you two options to show Komaru's descent into madness. But, of course, Toko is there to save you from such a fate. A nice little cutscene and pep talk from Toko later until... Oh look! Big Bang Monokuma. But, who's piloting it? My favorite boss fight of the game commences, but nothing super unique. We do get a classic Danganronpa screen in the form of Toko and Komaru, who use a Hope Bullet to defeat the Big Bang Monokuma.
Komaru and I are not alone. As long as there are friends who help each other, there's no need to despair at all. I found it. I finally found hope. A hope to call my own. Right, Komaru?
Yeah, me too!
Hope lives on!
As the Big Bang Monokuma is defeated, who do we see falling from the pilot seats? Oh, Shirokuma. Well, that sucks. I really like Shirokuma. He must have been a bad boy. Everyone escapes from the falling airship in a climatic way to end the final chapter, thus proceeding to the epilogue. One reason signifies why I love the epilogue so much. Allow me to show you.
Oh, you're awake? You were lucky. You would surely have perished if I wasn't there to save you.
Why?
I changed my mind and decided to stay in this town a while longer. And while I'm here, I figured I should see this through to the very end.
That's not what I meant.
Oh, you mean why I saved you? Because I'm the same as you. I'm disappointed, with endings that waver between despair and hope. I wish a real war had started. If it did, I know a brilliant hope would have been born. That is why I allowed myself to be captured after all.
So you did it on purpose?
But you aren't finished yet, right? Nothing has really changed since you began. So I need you to continue working hard, so that a splendid hope may be born. You have tasted the bitter despair of having your meticulous plan fall apart around you, so I know you can do it.
Really? Which side are you on?
Does it even matter? Anyway, why don't you be the successor for now? If that is your intention, I will lend you a hand. If my schedule allows it, of course. There is somewhere I need to be later.
What do you mean?
I shall raise you to be her copy. One even more realistic than the real one. Someone like me, who both hates and loves her more than anyone else. I should be able to make you more like her than even she herself was.
Gross.
Are they still at it with that successor or whatever?
You're talking too loud. They'll hear you.
They can hear all they fucking want. A bunch of chumps teaming up together makes them suck even more.
Well, when you think about it, the plan was flawed from the beginning. Trying to create a successor while the original still exists?
I know this was kinda my idea, but kids sure are stupid idiots.
Not just the kids. The adults are idiots too. Just by causing a little unrest, just pushing them a teeny bit, I had them spinning around in the palms of my hands.
Despite how you look, you sure are wicked inside. Even if the outside's white, the inside's pitch black. You a rice ball or something?
I may be wicked, but you are too. After all, we are.
No, not we. Maybe I, or maybe it's me.
Well, they're pretty much the same. White despair, black hope. In the end, neither one. But I guess that works too. I mean, I didn't really give a damn about this town from the beginning. The fact that those guys will take an interest in this place will yield a much more fruitful harvest. Hey, don't you think so? Personally, I think they did a pretty good job for a group of kids. Hey, don't you think so? Thanks to them, the preparations are nearly complete. Laying the foundations for the final match. It's so despairingly perfect. Hey, don't you... Oh, you're so forceful. What? Am I being too noisy for you? I see. I didn't know you still felt such
Izalu?
Or perhaps you're forcing yourself to feel something in a situation like this. Well, not that it matters.
Anyway, I leave the rest to you. Though I'm sure the next time I see you, you'll be someone else entirely. I hope you can at least have a little fun. I hope the future is going to be one you can't predict.
That cutscene, I have no words. The twist that Junko's AI had been implemented into both Kumas, plus the appearance of Izulu as he goes into Goodbye Despair, absolutely fan-fucking-tastic. That's all I can say. We learn that Komaru and Toko save Byakuya, who informs Makoto that the duo will be staying in Toa City to save those still trapped. It's a nice Disney sort of ending, with a cute after-credits scene involving some banter between the two protagonists, and thus ending the experience of Ultra Despair Girls. I truly, and I mean I truly hope you can now appreciate this game more after seeing it from my point of view. It's absolutely criminal how many people have ignored what I see as a masterpiece to the overall story of the Danganronpa universe. The gameplay may not have been strong, the graphics may have been iffy, but what matters is the story and the characters, and I've said that from the very beginning of the video, and I hope you guys can appreciate it. Of course, I hope you enjoyed this video. I like going back, discussing games, why I love them so much. If you want to see more content like this, stay tuned.